You've been one of the more outspoken CEOs in the oil patch, a big proponent of things such as the Climate Leadership Plan, carbon taxes. Winds are changing a little bit, though, when it comes to carbon taxes, and we just heard recently from former TransCanada executive Dennis McConaughey saying the provinces really need to drop this fight. Where do you stand on that?
Our position has always been principled based. So, if I look at prices on carbon, our thought has been climate change is happening. We want to be a leader in the world, not just in Alberta, not just in Canada, around sustainability. So you will see us being part of the solution. We think that probably involves a price on carbon. We've seen it as levies to individual large emitting companies. We've seen it as a more broadly based carbon tax. And we want to be a part of the conversation so that the right solution is found.
Do you think the other provinces are maybe taking a bit of a hard line on this?
I think there's a range of views across the provinces, and of course it depends partly on what their industry is and how their economies work. So I think it's absolutely appropriate that whilst there need to be a recognition of climate change and a recognition that we need to start to make some sensible changes towards a lower carbon world, the solutions have to come from the individual provinces, from the individual industries, so that they best help their economies going forward.
Here at home in Alberta, of course, we have a bit of a change in leadership. The incoming Premier Jason Kenney has said he wants to take a much harder stance when it comes to things such as setting up a war room, turning off the taps. Where do you fall on that?
I mean, again, I just go back to the principles. My objective is to have Alberta open for business. So that means good regulation, good public policy. And that's not the perception of us around the world at the moment. So, the counsel I would give, and this is, I've been around for 17 years here in Alberta now. So I've had multiple provincial governments, multiple federal governments, and I've worked with every one of those to try and get into the solution space. My advice is, work with all of the interested parties, make sure that we get Alberta open for business. We have a fabulous resource here in Alberta. We're not making the best of it for Alberta or for Canada. It's worth an absolute fortune. Everywhere else around the world would love to have this resource that we've got. I mean, I was just looking at the numbers before I came in to talk to you. The taxation on oil sands is $25 billion a year. That's what pays for nurses and doctors and teachers. And we need to make the best of that because it belongs to all of us.
Well, speaking about that, the taxation, the royalties, of course, you haven't been a big fan of the production cuts, but we heard from Cenovus CEO Alex Pourbaix yesterday, and he said that it's crystal clear they worked, that it kept money in the province. How do you feel about that? You haven't been a fan.
No, I haven't been a fan. I've been very clear. I think that markets have to work because in order for industries to invest, they need to be able to have some degree of confidence and certainty around the future. So I'm not a fan of intervention by governments. I think if I look at the big puts and takes, I understand where some of the other companies are coming from, but we designed a strategy and a company which was resilient to the full cycle. So we made a healthy return in the fourth quarter. We're going to make a very healthy return in the first quarter. So we're resilient to both types of environment. But if I look at curtailment, I think it's very easy to see some of the benefits of it. In the short term, the differentials have moved significantly, and the royalty take and the take for some of the companies has increased. And that's good news, and I support that. The problem we had was that there were going to be some unintended things that would happen. The first one that we highlighted was around moving crude by rail. Our view was if the differential became too tight, it would stop. That's what's happened, and the volumes are not moving. The second one was more longer term. So, if you've got the royalties increasing and cash intake, which is good in the short term, in the long term, the downside of it is investment is exiting Alberta and Canada now. And that's because investors cannot be confident when governments will intervene next. So my two biggest fears are happening. So my advice would be, we've done some short-term good by having curtailment. I think there are some things that could be done to potentially improve it, but I would plan for an exit from it in a controlled way so that people can be confident that the market is going to start to work again.
Speaking about investment, we have been hearing from some high-profile people that the Canadian oil sands is uninvestable. This is something you said last summer. Is it something you stand by? Do you think the situation's gotten worse or better?
I think certainly in the short term that's the case. I mean, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen around taxation, around royalties, around government intervention. In the longer term, it's very difficult to predict exactly what's happening both provincially and federally around regulation. So there is an off, not just oil sands. I mean, as I travel the world, it's an off Canada signal. There is a lack of confidence that Canada is actually open for business. So I think it's really important we start to get some clarity on those things because, where we started, we have a fantastic resource. We have projects queued up that we have investors willing to invest in, but they lack confidence in the regulatory and competitive side of Canada's economy.
And yet we're seeing world-renowned investor Berkshire Hathaway investing in a big way again in Suncor. So what does that say? That maybe some confidence is coming back?
I mean, I think what it says is that it's a recognition and a reflection of the resilient model that we've put together. So, and when I say resiliency, I mean, when crude prices were high, when crude prices were low, when pipelines could take all of our product away, when there were constraints, when curtailment wasn't here, when curtailment came, Suncor is positioned to be in good shape through all of that, both operationally and financially. So, even today with our expanded operation, we have access to market by pipeline for all of our products because we planned in advance. That was part of our strategy. So I think it's a bit of a reflection of the Suncor strategy that we're integrated and we're resilient through the cycle.
Okay, well, despite some of the attempts we've seen in Alberta when it comes to carbon taxes and doing all of these things, we still have a reputation around the world known as the tar sands. And, how do we get around that? What more do we have to do?
I mean, I think it's a never-ending journey of work. It's work that the companies have to do. It's work that local and federal governments have to do. It's work that all of us as Canadian citizens have to do because we should be proud of our resource. I hear we're making progress. So, if you poll across Canada now, the support is for the industry and for pipeline. If I go around the world, the preference would be to have Canadian oil. So, at the international forum that I go to, the last few years have been about how can we make sure we can confidently start to plan our economies on Canadian gas and Canadian oil. So I think we have to get ourselves open for business, become a reliable supplier, and the world wants Canadian oil because their alternatives are, they can go to South America, they can go to Russia, they can go to the Middle East, and they would prefer to have Canada because it has a reputation as a reliable, sustainable, properly regulated industry.
Okay, well, now I have to completely switch tacks here. Only a few days left in the job. You've had a lot of career highlights. How would you like to be remembered?
It's tough. I mean, I think I'd almost go back to what we've said in a sense. I set myself 3 clear objectives. One was get the company operating really well. I'm very comfortable with that. The employees are in fantastic shape. They've got a great leadership team. The second one was to get recognised for capital discipline so that, when growth was right, we did growth. When acquisition was right, we did acquisition. When returning funds to shareholders was right, we did that. So I think we got the reputation for capital discipline. And the third one was I really wanted to get one of these mega projects done on cost, on schedule, and it do what we said it would do. And Fort Hills has done that. So I'll be leaving a very happy man.
And we can only call it retiring in a very loose way. I mean, at the end of the day, you have just joined the board at TransCanada. What else are you hoping to still accomplish?
I plan to live in Alberta. I'll be Canadian forever now. So I plan to live here, still be part of the community and industry and help where I can. I'm hoping to be on the TransCanada board next week. I don't get elected until potentially.
I jumped the gun on you.
You jumped the gun, but that's fine. Until Friday, it's in the proxy statement, so that's fine. So it's public. It's public knowledge. So I'm hoping to go on that board next week and still play a part in the sector. And my wife has big plans for me.